collecting information on the types of assets, determining who the heirs are, and there's a difference between heirs, which is like family and descendants, and then there's beneficiaries. The beneficiaries have been identified that they're going to be getting some kind of asset, and heirs, they may not be included in the documents at all. Okay, next. Decide whether there's going to be a probate. If you have everything in a trust, there should not be a probate. That's one of the reasons people use trusts. But if not, you're going to go to probate. There's a thing called an ancillary probate. So if they owned a house in Utah and they live in California and that Utah house is in their own name, you've got to do a probate in Utah. You can't do any of the papers here. Just look at the assets and see if any immediate action is necessary. Okay, next. So this is kind of from a firm viewpoint, determine what documents to assemble for a meeting with the client in our case. I generally don't like having meetings with clients about estate trust administration for after 40 days after somebody dies. I think it's kind of disrespectful in my view that somebody died last Tuesday and Friday they're in trying to settle out what their assets are. There's no reason in the world why you have to be that fast, and just the grieving process, it's just, I don't even put on my accountants, but no, go out 40 days or more. Let everybody start dealing with the reality of what happened. When you have a will and you know of the will, the original has to be filed in the Superior Court in the county where the person lived. I generally make a copy of it, you file it in the court, and give them the original, and I put a copy behind it, ask them to stamp it so I have proof that I filed the will. It's a rule, it's a requirement, it's a statute. There's no penalty involved, and I've never heard of anybody getting in trouble for not filing a will. That's different than doing a probate. That's just whether you have a trust or you're never going to do a probate, the will is still required to be filed. Okay, so overview on these three stages: notification to people, asset management, valuations, and about distributions. Okay. We have, like I said, a very detailed checklist that has everything under the sun that we've ever heard of, that we go through to see what's applicable in this particular circumstance. The checklist is just kind of get an idea of what things we need to do. You need to get a new ID number. The person's Social Security number is frozen when they die. Cannot be used for anything more. So, I need to make it definitional. They use the term estate and trust, and most people don't know the difference between the two. Okay? If somebody dies in assets, they have assets in a will, but not in a trust, that's an estate. And it's a separate legal entity when the person dies. Then in the trust, a revocable trust is not a separate legal entity. It's a piece paper because it's revocable and changeable. When somebody dies, now, irrevocable, non-changeable, now it's a separate legal entity. And for that, you need to get a new ID number. You call it a taxpayer identification number, employer identification number, but you need one. And we get them online from the IRS while clients are waiting. And you have to be careful. I've seen some mess ups on a person's trying to get a federal ID number for a trust, and they check the box, oh yeah, this is an estate. Big problem. You bring that to the bank and you want a checking account for your trust, and they say, can't give it to you. And the banks don't tell you why. Well, the papers say an estate. You don't have an estate. You're working with a trust. You used the wrong word. Okay. So, yeah, let's go to the next one. So, let's say you've been appointed trustee, person's passed away, now you're in charge. Most all of the trustees we work with have never done this before. They have no clue what they're doing. Not a problem. You just need to be able to follow instructions. They don't teach this in any school that I'm aware of, except law school. But you know you got to trust. So what we do, first thing, we prepare a summary of the trust. Write it up. We call it a pink sheet because we print it on pink paper so we can see it in the file easily. And who are the beneficiaries? What do you want to do with what assets? What are the requirements for the trust? You know, do you have to wait until kids are 18 before they get anything? All the essential parts. Who is a successor trustee? Those kinds of things. And the reason for the summary is you're working trying to do paperwork and you may not remember all the provisions, so the summary makes it easier rather than trying to read through all those pages every time. Okay, there's a thing called a disclaimer, and that is if somebody's, so let's say I'm Mr. Got Rocks, okay? I'm worth billions. And somebody's going to give me an inheritance. And it says, Rex gets, you know, I own Mount Tamalpais and you get it. And I say, well, I don't want it. I don't want to mow the lawn over there. So you can do a disclaimer within 9 months of the date of death. So you write back and say to the trustee, I don't want it. I'm not going to accept it. So it's like ducking your head. And what happens is whoever the other asset beneficiary is, it goes to them and misses you. And now you don't have to be dealing with all that paperwork. So you're not required, just because somebody is going to give you something, if you don't want it, disclaim it. Next. Trustees' duties. Trustees have a high degree of responsibility for dealing with someone else's money. It's kind of like the responsibility of a bank. You're dealing with somebody else's money. You can't burn it, forget it, waste it, use it on yourself, go to Disneyland on that money. All those things will get you in trouble. There's a form. Judicial council is like a board of directors right under the California Supreme Court, and they come up with all these court forms called judicial council forms. And a summary of some of the fiduciary responsibilities is on form BB 149.
printed things also on the material that?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Right. So you can do an internet search and ask for DE 147 and see what it says. Some trusts, if you're the trustee, if it says you need a bond, that means insurance. So you go to a bonding company and you buy insurance in case the assets in the trust come up missing for any reason. And usually the trustee has to have more assets than the bond, so the bonding company can come after them and hold them responsible for the missing money. In probates, bonds every time in a probate. In a trust, most of the time people do not have bonding requirements. They say, I trust my successor trustees.
Would the successor trustee ever decide that he or she wanted to have a bond?
They could.
Insurance for him or her? Okay.
Yes, but it only insures for missing and unaccounted for funds.
Okay.
If you trust yourself, then you probably are wasting the money, and that might be a problem.
Okay.
You say, you know, you're honest, you've never been arrested, you know, you go to church on Sunday every time, and you've never lied to your mama, and so you're wasting trust money. You got to pay for that now, because there's no requirement that you do that. Okay, next. This is that form I was talking about, has a few of the responsibilities. In probate, you must get one of those. In trust, there are two different systems. Wills, the train's leaving, man, I gotta catch that train. Wills came from Roman law, and Roman law evolved, and it first only citizens could transfer assets, but that's why we have wills. And then trusts came from England, and they came from a completely different source. And what they did is a lot of the people for the Crusades and things, they had assets, and they were going to be riding off into the battleground, and they wanted to have somebody take care of their assets in case they didn't come back. And then we got trust laws. So they're completely two different systems, but we have them both. And if you have a will and you have over 184,500 of assets, then you get the opportunity to go to probate court and spend the next year filling out forms and talking to judges. If you don't like that kind of stuff, then you want a trust. And the trust does not have to go to probate court unless there's a beef. One of the beneficiaries wants to sue the trust, then it would go to the probate court. Next. Next. Okay, so somebody passed away. The beneficiaries may or may not have known that, and you as trustee are required to tell them. There's a form, there's a probate code section, we just call it 16061.7, but we kind of memorize it. Tells the trustee that, it tells the beneficiaries or heirs, they don't have to be beneficiaries, tells them all, so-and-so died on this date, I'm in charge, here's my address, here's my phone number and email. You may or may not be a beneficiary. You're entitled to a copy of the trust if you ask for it. And then you send out that notice. If you give them a copy of the trust, when you send the notice, then they have 60 days to file in court if they object to it, or object to you being trustee. If you don't include the trust, then they have 120 days. And what we normally do is we send them out for the office, and we do it like a proof of service, where we have one person in the office verifying under penalty of perjury that we really mailed it for those people. Well, I didn't get anything. I don't know. That we have proof that it got mailed. Yes, sir.
If it's a joint trust and only, and in the terms of the trust, all the assets go to the other person, then you don't have to notify all the beneficiaries until the second party dies.
I would disagree with you because sometimes.
Well, I'm asking you this.
I think that it should be given because what you want is to cut off the rights to sue. And so if you did not give that notice and one beneficiary said, hey, well, somebody promised me the family farm and now it's going to survivor and they sue, they're not cut off. But if you give them the 1606 1.7 notice and a copy of the trust, it shortens the time they have to object. So I do include it. Even though you say it's ridiculous, everything goes to survivor. I know that. But I said, well, I was promised, I made up stuff and I believe it. One of the things we don't do when we're sending that notice, we do not include the Schedule A of assets. Figure that's none of their business. I don't want to stir up anything. Guess what they have. I'm not required to tell you. Next. This is a sample form of what I'm talking about. You give the notice name that the trust was created, name and address of trustee, contact if you have any questions. Then it tells about how many days they have to object or they lose their right to. And if people are really in a hurry to make distributions, which I don't recommend, if you made distributions to beneficiaries before that time passed, you're in a pickle because they can still sue, claim and then reverse what you did, maybe try to charge you for it. You consider sending it by certified mail for the service. Return receipt request. Next, if you send them a copy of the trust with the notice, yes. And you send it to heirs, not to beneficiaries. Even if they're not in any document, they're a cousin, uncle, send it. Okay, inventory of assets. You need to do, first identify all assets in the decedent. And then you need to value them. What are they currently worth now? Stock holdings, what we do with stock holdings, I'm sure it's coming up later, but you need to identify all of the stocks and accounts that they own. And then there will be assets that are outside of the trust. So let's say they have a trust bank account, and then they've got a personal operating account. They keep $10,000 in to pay PG&E bill, and it's in their name personally. There's a form that we use, a 13100 form, which we'll get into. You tell the bank, hey, I'm the executor, I'm the trustee, give me the assets, don't say that I got to go to probate. And if you don't give me the assets, then I can sue the bank and the bank has to pay my attorney's fees. So it's outside of probate. The whole value of the estate is less than $184,500. Another concept that comes up, people put their house in trust, say, I'm going to avoid probate. Oh, yeah. And and then they refinance their house. And the banks don't like trusts. They don't want to read them. And so the bank says, well, you deed it out of your trust into your name personally, then we're going to make the loan. And then they stop. They don't talk about it anymore. Then they do that. Now the title is in the person's name. Guess what? We're talking probate. That's a goof. It happens quite a lot. And there's a remedy for it based on a court case, the Hegstad case, later one, Ugelstad, where in a deed you have grantor, grantee, notarized identification of the property on a deed. That's how you transfer property normally. In a trust, you've got notarized. You got it signed. You've got the identification of the property. So it looks like from the trust you intended to put it into the trust, but it's not. So you go to the court and say, Your Honor, we messed up. We want you to assume that the trust instrument kind of acts like a deed and put it back in the trust because I don't want to take a year and do probate. This is when there's personal property, bank accounts, other personal property. It could be anything. You could have a car in storage, personal property. And you go to the storage outfit and say, give me this car. They say no. You give them this and say, I'm the trustee, I'm the executor, you've got to give it to me. If you don't, we can sue your storage facility and you get to pay the attorney's fees. You decide what you want to do. The whole thing is, probate is a real nuisance when you get above 184,500 of assets. And the little stuff, the legislature has said, let's not make every darn piece of paper in the court. So they said, we're going to require holders of assets to give it to who it's supposed to go to. And if it turns out to be fraudulent, the person giving it's not responsible because they followed the rules. Are we boring you yet?
No, this is more difficult than I thought.
Well, I can talk faster.
No, then I missed more.
All I can say is next semester's coming quick. We'll see about that. And then you could read the slide. I know it's tough, especially if it's not your vocabulary. I live and breathe this stuff, so I kind of got an idea for it. But yeah, it takes a while to absorb it. And as a trustee, successor trustee, either you could learn it all yourself or say hell with it, hire an attorney, an accountant, and say, what do I do? And then they narrow it down to this is what you do, without having to know the whole breadth of the topic.
And you can charge the fee that you pay the other person out of
The trust has to pay for it. It's an ordinary administration of an estate. Yeah. Any ordinary and necessary expense, charge it to the trust. Absolutely. That's what it's for. Yes, sir.
184,000, that's just assets that are not titled into the trust, right?
That's right. That's market value
Oh,
for everything that the person owns
outside the trust.
outside the trust. Right.
And at some point you're going to talk about a pour-over will?
Nah.
Okay.
I'll do that now.
Okay.
Pour over will, and it's P-O-R-E instead of P-O-U-R or something like that. Yeah, the spelling on that. So a pour over will says, I got a trust. Anything that you find that I own, and you want to know what I would do with it if I was operating under the will, go read the trust. Do that. If the trust is invalid, do what it says anyway. Anything you want to know, go read the trust. So pour over means it's very short and says, I don't care what you want to know. Go read the trust. That's how I want it to go.
And that keeps you out of probate.
No,
No?
no.
Oh, heck.
I know, it sounds too easy, but you gotta talk to the legislature about that. That gives the court the authority to say, yeah, I think it should be in the trust. But it's not an automatic. It's still subject to we talked about, estate and will and trust. When you're in that arena, estate and wills, you got the probate court right over your head every time. But that's why people use pour over wills. They say, heck with it, I don't want that at all, just do it that way. Do it in whatever the trust is. Yeah. Okay. So sometimes in a trust or estate, you have assets that you're going to give away to the beneficiary directly. Don't sell it, that family farm. We want that to be in our family forever. Don't sell it. Give it to the beneficiaries. So it's called transfer in kind. You're transferring an asset out. It's a farm in the trust. It goes out to the beneficiaries. It's still a farm. And then, what if the beneficiaries sell it? Are they going to have a gain or loss? That's a question that comes up all the time. Are inheritance taxable? If I get a bequest? No, they're not. Really? No, they're not.
Wait, say that one more time?
Sure. I get the question. If I get a bequest, I just got $1 million from Granddad, is it taxable? The answer is no. It is not taxable. It's not income.
But appreciation after,
Once you own it,
then
then you're on the rocket ride, and market value goes up. It's still not taxable until you sell it. And that's what this form is about. Did you catch that? Yes,
Kind of.
no?
So, this kind of goes back to the inheritance tax that got passed, right? So you're saying any property that gets transferred to a beneficiary is not then reassessed for taxing until they sell it?
That's 3 different legal issues all in one sentence.
I know.
So let me break
It's
it down.
pertinent to our family.
Oh, yeah, they're important
very
issues.
confusing.
They're important. I know, I could tell. So let's do the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about inheritance tax. First of all, we have in the U.S. estate tax, IRS Form 709. When your estate per spouse is over $14 million, then you have to file an estate tax return. It's not income, it's based on value. Okay, only less than 1% of the people now have those. We still do those kind of tax returns. Okay, so that's the estate tax return. Now, you brought up whether it was taxable to the beneficiary, and the answer is no, it's just not. Okay, it's really a dumb distinction, but when you're talking about estate tax, that's from the decedent side of the fence, estate, okay, or trust. Then when we go on the other side of the fence to a beneficiary, then that's called an inheritance tax. We don't have them. Federal
What's it
doesn't have
called on
them.
that side?
What's that?
What's it called on that other side?
Let me go over here so
Yeah,
I
sure.
know. Let's see, this one is the estate tax.
Okay,
Because it applies to the trust or the estate, you better pay this tax before it goes out.
got it.
But if I'm just sitting here waiting for uncle to give me the $1 million on beneficiary, it's called an inheritance tax. Some states have it. California doesn't, federal doesn't. Okay, so that's two of the rules you crossed. Let me get the third one. The third one you crossed was reassessment. That's huge. I could do a whole 2-hour class on that alone. And that is California with their enthusiasm to tax. If you got grandma's house that she bought it for $2,000 in Orinda, and the property tax is $500 a year, and then grandma gives it to grandkid or whatever, now it's worth $4 million, and now the property tax just gets reassessed so that they have an opportunity to pay $30,000 a year in real estate tax. But that's a state tax under State Revenue and Taxation Code, Section 480. It's not inheritance. It's a deceptive inheritance based on a fraudulently presented Proposition 19. But they don't call it an inheritance tax. And it's for the ownership in the future. But you're getting way ahead of what we're doing here. So did that answer that?
Yes, that makes a lot more sense now, for sure.
Good. It's hard to slice this thing up because, one word and boom, you fall off the table because you got the word wrong.
Yeah.
But, let's say you get a house, forgetting about the reappraisal, or reassessment, I guess it's called. And that house is taken over by the beneficiary, and it appreciates tenfold.
Yeah, isn't that fantastic?
Okay, well, great, okay. But, if it's only increases fivefold from the date of death, you have to get that appraised at the time of transfer, correct?
At the time of death, not at the time of transfer.
Time of death, yeah. You get it appraised, so that sets a new value to that asset.
Correct. But let me explain it in my gobbledygook way of doing that. Under Section 1014 of Internal Revenue Code, with grandma's house in Orinda, bought for $2,000, now worth $4 million. Now I'm the beneficiary and I got this house for $4 million. Get it appraised, and then I don't sell it until it goes to $5 million. So I've got $1 million of capital gain. Okay, but that's exactly what this form does. The IRS form 8971. How does the beneficiary know that it's worth $4 million now? Well, the trustee or executor gets it appraised, and they fill out this form for the trust or estate, and then on the backup pages has for each beneficiary their percentage of that. And then when the beneficiary sells it, they go, IRS says, I'm going to audit you. What do you mean it was worth $4 million when you got it? Oh, it's when the trustee appraised it.
So while you're waiting your 40 days in deference to the death of the decedent, then time is passing. Would you, as the executor, if you were, get a couple of things appraised during that 40 days?
You could. You could also put a forwarding address in on the mailbox to the trustee. Decedent's house is over there and they've been getting mail, and you go to the post office and say, don't send their mail over there anymore. Send it to me.
No? Okay. Yeah.
You can also use
Lots
that
of stuff
time,
you can do in the 40 days.
identify assets, look at the mail that's coming in. Does it look like there's a loan? Does it look like there's a check coming? Does it look like there's an investment account? this is just the beneficiary side of this form. Next. Certificates of trust. Some people will take a trust and they'll boil it down kind of as a synopsis, the essential parts of it, but they don't want anybody to know who the beneficiaries are, all the details of it. So they make a summary. They call it a certification of trust, and it's notarized, and sometimes it will be recorded in the public record so everybody can see it, but they don't know the details of it. Beneficiaries, trustees, any of that. So it gives the existence of the trust. Sometimes banks want it, title companies may want it. We don't use it that often. We have other methods that we use to avoid the questions. But it is something you hear about quite a bit. And it also kind of reinforces the names of the trustees that are on title to property. Next. This is a certification trust summary form. It's just a model, sample form. Next. The state tax return. That, I go to a lot of, lawyer type seminars and stuff, and they go on and on and on and on about a state tax return. So wake me up when it's done. Because very few people have more than $14 million of assets when they die, or 28 million if it's a couple. So spending all that time learning it and you never use it, what a waste of life. So if you're not, like the Rockefellers or something, forget it. Don't waste any time on the estate tax in Form 706. Yes, sir.
Is that 14 million a fixed number? I thought I remembered hearing years ago that it was much lower.
Yeah, when I started, it was 625,000.
Oh.
And then we did all kinds of inheritance tax returns all the time. Then it went up, and then it dropped out to zero in 2010, and then it's been going up every year. Every year it'll go up another million or so.
You mean there's inflation built into it?
Yeah, there's an adjustment factor built in the statute. But regardless of all the inner workings, my view is that I did one last year, one inheritance, the 7-0. They're not that common. But I know that you're worth more than that, so that's a big concern. And yeah, so I mean, you should really pay more attention to this because.
So the thing you're talking about,
Yeah.
the federal exemption amount is 14 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
Per person.
Got it.
Unless you're not a citizen.
Oh.
Bingo. If you're married to a non-citizen, it's 185,000. Yes. Wow. Amount of that above 185,000 to a non-citizen.
Yeah.
37% inheritance tax, estate tax. I said it wrong. Estate tax.
Did you say are not a citizen or you're married to one?
Either way.
Oh.
Whatever it is as a beneficiary. If the beneficiary is not a citizen, they can be a resident alien. But this tax says, what they worried about is a big bunch of money will go to a non-citizen, and then the money will go across the border and leave the country. So we have a solution to that. It's called a Qualified Domestic Trust, or a QDOT. And you have to have a U.S. citizen trustee, but we can defer it. But it's huge for non-citizen spouses or beneficiaries. The estate tax return, this is boring, let's move on. Keep going. Wake me up, come on, okay. Now, accounting. You're handling someone else's money. And sometimes those other people don't trust the trustee, even though it sounds like it in the name. So there's a system of accounting. We teach classes on it. It's not like business accounting. And as a trustee, you give all the information to the beneficiaries. They want bank statements, give it to them. Because you don't want litigation. Because when they don't get any paper, they think, oh, everything disappeared. Oh, all the money's gone. Give them all kinds of paper until they're bored. Like those stock reports you get, 50 zillion pages. I'm not reading that thing. Throw it away. You know, he gave you so much. Just I told you about it. It was on page 79 in 8-point type. But you want clear communication with your beneficiaries so that they get enough information that everything's going fine. If you have a probate, you're required to do an accounting, a court accounting. For trust, it's optional. A beneficiary can force it, say, I want it, and then you got to do one. It's a fair amount of paperwork. You track every cent. And like I say, every 2 months we teach a class in court accounting through the Contra Costa County Law Library. You can go next. So this is the center of the fiduciary accounting, required for every probate, optional for trustees unless the beneficiary demands it, then it's mandatory. I could bore you stiff with going through every line and telling you everything you needed to know about it, but I don't really feel that devious tonight. Just know it's there. If you are a trustee and you have to hire an accountant, just make sure the person really knows court accounting, because they don't teach this in CPA school. Not at all. This is strictly based on California probate code. And if you hire somebody who doesn't know about court accounting and they do it wrong, and then you have to hire somebody else, the beneficiaries can hold you liable for that faulty payment for you hiring the incompetent person. Next. So I've got an example in here that I'm not going to go through. Basically, you show all of the income chronologically and then all of the income by categories. You show all the expenses chronologically and then you show all the expenses by categories.
Those are pennies in there, right?
You know, IRS hates pennies, and so do I. They're not worth the copper they're printed on. But the court's kind of retentive, and you got to account for every penny in court accounting. In tax, nearest dollar, move on. Okay, let's get out of accounting land, as fun as this might be to some people. But yeah, here. Like I say, we teach a class every 2 months. We just did one on court accounting. It's online Zoom. You can contact the Cut Across the County Law Library for additional information. We've been teaching that for 7, 8 years now. Tax forms. Okay. Let's go on. Okay, so person's going along and they pass away and now they have a final tax return to do up to the date of death, any income. And the trustee, in this case it's usually executor, has to sign the return, you know, John decedent by Susie, executor, fiduciary. Do the normal times. Next. Then from the day after the date of death to the end of the year, then you no longer are using that Social Security number. You get that taxpayer identification number I told you about, and you put that on a different tax return called a U.S. tax return for estates and trusts, to report the income. If there's any income over $600 during that year, you have to do this form. If it's less than 600 of income, forget it. No filing required. Okay. 706, that's the inheritance, the 14 million. Okay. 709, there's a way when you have super high assets to try to make it go down quicker, and that's by giving away money. And if you give more than 18,000 a year, you're supposed to file one of these. It's not taxable right then, but it hits you with more inheritance tax later. But for us, it's irrelevant. Move on. Next one. 1310. You're doing a final 1040 tax return, and you're the executor, and there's a refund. The IRS goes, well, how do I know you're entitled to it? Well, you fill out this form, and you may not be any more entitled, but they'll give you the refund. Just says, I promise I'm going to do what I'm supposed to when that refund comes. Oh, okay. There you go. Fine. You know the form. Next. SS4, we do them online. That's to get the ID number. As I mentioned, don't mix up an estate and trust with your ID number. Next. 1099, you're supposed to issue 1099s. Nobody really does it, but let's move on.
What would that be for? The 1099 miscellaneous from a deceased person?
Technically, there's a requirement to issue it to attorneys, non-corporate entities, independent contractors. There's a requirement, but most people, it's like, what? I didn't hear that.
I see, okay.
Is that based ultimately to make sure that the attorney pays his taxes?
Yeah, there's some question there. Yeah. Yeah, that's why they're trying to get them in the loop. Yeah.
So if the trustee decides to pay somebody to do part of the work that they don't want to do, for good reason, then a 1099 MISC would be required if it's more than $600 to an accountant or somebody else.
Yes.
Okay.
And I can testify from personal experience. There's very low compliance with that requirement.
Yeah.
Okay, next. Upon the death of the second spouse, let's see. So to find out what assets need to be transferred, you still have to identify the assets. So the trustee's duties are the same, but now all the assets are being administered. There's a fairly common kind of trust called an AB trust, and if you run across one of those, first person to die, one trust is created and it's irrevocable, and then the survivor's trust is still revocable and changeable. And if you have that situation, then you end up with two tax returns to do, because the B trust, we call it, has already been filing taxes, and then you start the new one. Okay, next. This is, we covered that one, but just a second. Okay, inventory of assets, we covered that. Real property documents. Several forms need to be filed when someone dies, and they are usually with us. They're a trustee of their trust, and it shows on the title. So we prepare and file an affidavit of death of trustee, along with an original death certificate that says this person's listed as trustee. they're no longer alive. This is the successor trustee, and I'm filing this as the successor. Now, anybody wants to talk about this property, they need to talk to me as the successor trustee. That's with the county recorder. Then we have the assessor's office. The assessor, we need to fill out forms of notice of death of real property owner. And it's not public record, but it has to be filed. There's another form if you're trying to keep from having your property tax reassessed. There's a parent-child exclusion. If the parent lived in the house and one of the kids are going to inherit the house and they don't want the property tax to go up, and if you do one of those forms, you also have to file a homeowner's exemption form that tells the county who's the resident of that house.
Doesn't the child have to move into that property?
Yes.
How long would they have to stay in the
At
property?
least overnight.
Okay.
No. What the county does is they use the homeowner's exemption form as their determinant that somebody's living there, in this case the child. It's worse than that. Let's say and you have to file the homeowner's exemption. So they say, okay, I'm living in the Orinda house now, and okay, I like Tahoe, so I'm going up to Tahoe and I file a homeowner's exemption up there. Boom, automatically Orinda got reassessed. You lost it because they use the homeowner's exemption form that reduces your tax assessment by $7,000 and saves you a whopping $55 a year in property tax. But they use that form to indicate who is the resident.
So is it just as long as you live there? So you can't like rent it out, you can't...
Well, I'm just telling you how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
You're supposed to live there, but I don't keep tabs on everybody. But the county, the problem people get into is they get another house and file another homeowner's exemption. They just knock that one out.
Right.
They track that. But you're supposed to be living there.
Yeah.
I mean, you could rent it out, you know, have some roommates. Yeah. Yeah. It just says you have to live there. It doesn't say there can't be other parcels or other buildings rented. It just says it's my residence, my home. As long as that's true and correct, then you're within your reason, right?
Excuse me, would that hold true if everybody decided they wanted to sell the property and one person wanted to buy it from the rest of the family, buy them out of that? Would you be able to, and you're gonna live there? Okay, wasn't sure, just asking. So it would become a brand new assessment and everything, and taxes would go up.
Let me address the situation that you raised.
Okay.
Okay, so 3 beneficiaries. Mom lived there, daughter's going to live there, and the other 2 kids are not going to live there. It qualifies. All don't have to live there, just one. Okay, when you said we had 3 and we sold, reassessed when you sell. Okay, but you put another wrinkle in that question. What if they bought out the other 2? So one bought out the other 2. There's the wrong way and the right way. The wrong way, you do a buyout. And 2/3 of the house now got reassessed. And the 1/3 didn't. Okay, that's the wrong way. The right way.
Okay.
What you do back in the trust, you say, I'm not gonna put those beneficiaries' names on the property. I'm gonna get a loan as a trust. And out of that loan, gee, the two that didn't want to own it, they get money from the loan. And the one that wanted to live there gets the house, and they get the loan. And there's no reassessment. That's the right way. But it has to be done by the trust, and there has to be enough assets in there to do that. Because the county comes in and says, is there enough money in here? Is this really a buyout? We like taxes. So that's how you do it the right way. What other real property documents? Every time you file a deed, you need a preliminary change of ownership report. And that's basically 2 pages of the county saying, how can I tax you? Did you do this? Can I tax you if you did that? Can I tax you if you did something else? And if you don't file that form, you get a $20 fine for not cooperating. Next. Real property document. Okay, we covered that one. Claims, we covered that one. Yeah, there's some ways you can really mess it up. If you're good at it, you can really mess these things up. The parent-child exclusion. You go from parent to child, and the person died, and then 4 years later, you record the deed, put the kid on, claim the parent-child exclusion, and what happens is the property tax was down here, and it goes up to here for 3 years plus until you file the homeowner's exemption of the parent-child, and then it drops down, and it's lower. So that's how you mess that one up. Don't do it within 1 year.
So a trust can take a loan on a house?
Yes.
Okay.
The trust can use real property as security against a real property loan with a note and a deed of trust. And I'll tell you right now, most commercial banks won't talk to you. We have one, there's several of them that know this little trick about trustee borrowing.
Right.
And what they do is they put up the money to make it happen, but it's not a 30-year mortgage. So they give you time to do the deal, save the tax, and then refi them out later.
Gotcha.
If there's enough assets, let's say investments and so forth, can that be, instead of taking a loan out, can that be used to pay off? So
Yes.
You ask for.
Yes, if the liquidity is there.
The liquidity. Okay.
Another thing I want to point out in trust and estate administration is pensions, IRAs, pensions, 401ks, annuities, and life insurance. You say the trustee's in charge, I'm controlling all this stuff. Those items, they're not controlling at all. There's a contract between the vendor and the decedent that says, when I die, give it to them. It's another trust. And so people are confused by that. And the problem is, I'm always aware of it, because if you start giving assets out, like on transfer on death accounts and stuff, you leave the trust cash deficient for administration. You need to think about cash flow for the trust administration. And you could fix some of that by the person, when they're still alive, name the trust as a beneficiary on the IRA or things like that. There's some tax problems with the beneficiaries when the trust.
If you don't name the trustee as a beneficiary, does that value of that IRA fall under the $181,000?
Okay, you said if you do not name the trustee?
Well, even if you do, it's outside the IRA or the 401.
Okay, I got the question now. It is outside the area of probate. Okay. There's several categories that are outside of probate by operation of law. One of them is a transfer on death account. Another is those pension items transfer. Another is I don't use them, but a transfer on death deed, because I don't like them. So anything that transfers automatically is not part of probate either. Because what those accounts usually are is they're another trust. In IRA, you've got the trustee being Charles Schwab, you got the beneficiaries, the named, and you have the settlor being the person on the account. It is a trust already. Okay, next. This is the affidavit of death of trustee. So the named trustee, so there's two trustees, Ma and Pa Kettle, and Pa died. Then we get the death certificate for Pa and file that with the affidavit of death. Then only Ma Kettle is on as trustee to continue on. And do a preliminary change of title report and a notice of death of real property owner to the assessor. Okay, next.
What if the first successor trustee does not choose to be a successor trustee? Do you tell the court anything? You tell the court?
Ruffle up. No. You don't tell anybody. Since the 16th Amendment and the abolition of slavery, they don't have to just because they're named.
Right.
Yeah, they can decline to act, and they usually put that in writing. No way, Jose, I'm not going to do that work. You get somebody else. Okay, so, but that does not require a court.
Okay.
It can require a court. We've gotten them in where the successor trustee is dead. Nobody else named.
Oh.
We had to go to court to get somebody named. Oops, you should have had 3. Okay. Change of ownership, death of real property owner form for the assessor. This is not recorded, just the assessor. Next. This is a parent-child exclusion form. Social security numbers. The parent has to live there, the child has to live there. Next. There's also a grandparent to grandchild exclusion from reassessment, but the trap there is if any of the middle generations alive, they get reassessed. So only if the middle generation, I guess the kid and stepchild of the grandparent are not alive, then it can go from grandparent to grandchild. But there's still the residency requirement. Next. Even if people are not married, they can transfer the property tax lower with a co-tenant residency affidavit of co-tenant residency. Next. Same for domestic partners, can do a transfer between themselves without reassessment. This is just a blow up on a grant deed, how to do them. We do quite a few grant deeds. Transferring property from the trust to a beneficiary, or we do it in when we sell the property. Oftentimes we have to work with the trustee, and they're going to be selling. So we bring in real estate brokers. quitclaim deed, this is how you do them. I don't like the quitclaim deed. It does not have what's called warranties of title, which means on a grant deed you say, I own it, I'm in charge, I have all the rights in the world, nobody can question my ownership. In a grant deed, I can give you, legally I can give you a quitclaim deed for my ownership interest in the Golden Gate Bridge. Absolutely I can do that. There's no warranties of title. I didn't say I owned anything. I just said I granted you whatever I own. And I did. Next. Preliminary change of ownership report goes with every deed. This is how you fill them out. Next. If you own entities like limited liability companies, oftentimes they're used in real estate. They have to file annual tax returns. And one of the requirements, the state is enthusiastic about taxing. So if you own property in an LLC and the person dies, they want to see that the property is reassessed. So in the LLC, you're supposed to file this form, Schedule B, to tell them that the person died. And if you don't do it, there's no statute of limitations, and they can go back 10 years and reassess. Next. So this is the Schedule B to tell the state that the LLC changed owners. Next. When you get around to distributing assets, we suggest using a distribution agreement. So you paid all the bills, you've met all the responsibilities, you're getting ready to distribute to the beneficiaries, and at that point, if you're doing an accounting, which is a good idea but not mandatory, you send a letter to each of the beneficiaries and they say, dear beneficiary, we're projecting that you're going to get $7 million, but we need to get a receipt from you that you got it, and we need to get a waiver of doing accounting, that we're not going to do accounting and you're not going to make us do the accounting, but I cannot force you to waive that right, but I can tell you if you don't waive that right, I'm going to court and having the judge approve the accounting, and so you're going to get less money, but I can't make you agree to waive that accounting. It's up to you. And then you do that and get your release for the accounting and all the acts of the trustee, because the trustee can get sued for 3 years after any act of acting as a trustee. And when a trust distributes all its assets, it's kaput, gone, and hand-filed all its tax returns. In a probate, it's a little bit different. In a probate, when you're done and all the assets are gone, you get a final distribution order. You have to go back to the court to get the court to let you off the hook, so nobody calls you the executor or administrator anymore. But there's no process like that for trust. Next. Yeah.
Could you go back to that last one?
Sure.
So you make the final trust, and you list everything that has been sent out, delivered to each individual, and you have the receipts. So then, once that's all been completed, how do you get the final trust terminated? Do you have to go get it certified or notarized or?
goes poof, and it's gone. It just like disappears. There's no assets. There's no beneficiaries left. There's nothing left to do. You're off the hook, assuming you filed your tax return. So there's no grand finale, no curtain call. You're done. It's done. Yeah, it just kind of
You're done.
fades off into oblivion.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good, I wasn't sure, so, thank you.
But not so much in probate. You get a lot of fanfare, court orders, binding distribution orders, enough paper to paper a garbage can.
You have to close the trust account when you open, or is that the time?
What usually happens is there's a reserve for contingency. So I'm gonna keep back 2,000 in case something comes up in the next 6 months. Nothing comes up. You got a third. You just pay out the last bit, or have the bank close the account with cashier's checks. Then the account goes away. And on the trust tax return, there's a box to check that says it's the final trust return. Because doing tax returns, you get these K1s in every year, and you're looking at them. And if it doesn't say final, next year I'm doing a tax return, you get me a K1 for that thing. It still says it's around, so I'm not finishing this return until you get a K1 is like a W-2 that tells you how much money you're supposed to report on your tax return. Okay, next. Yeah, we were here once before he backed out. Next. Can you amend a revocable trust? Well, most things in law, you can't do it, so you do it anyway. There's exceptions to this, amending it in a revocable trust you can amend, no problem, because it says revocable. But if it's irrevocable, non-changeable, just a second, it can be revoked by the settler who made it and all beneficiaries. Agreed. Forget that thing. Start over. Or you get it amended by a court order. And then another way, kind of roundabout way, is you do what's called decanting. You take one trust and you pour all the assets into another trust. Kind of like decanting wine to get the crud off the bottom. So there's 3 ways to amend an irrevocable trust. Next. Let's see what this is all about. Oh yeah. So one spouse is going to get a house, an inheritance house. It's supposed to be in their name, and then they put their spouse on title, and then now there's 2 owners, and it was a 50% transfer. People get tripped up on that all the time. Somebody's getting older, and I don't want a trust, I don't want a will. I'm just going to put my kid on deed. Mistake. You got joint tenants. You just gave away half the house. I've even seen a case where son was helping dad. Dad wanted the house to be split between son and daughter. The son came in and had the house put in son's and dad's name as joint tenants. And in the will and trust, in the will, it said that daughter gets half. Wonderful. I could say that all day long. But the deed says joint tenants. When one dies, the other one owns it all. So it didn't work out too well for daughter.
I have a question before on the revocable, changing the revocable. If you have joint trustees, okay, spouse and wife, Crandell and Paul Kettle again, and one passes away and the trust says everything goes to spouse, to mom, back to mom, okay? Can mom then change who inherits after that? Change everything in there?
Yeah, what we have, I call that an I love you trust, because it's irrevocable, correction, revocable and changeable before death. It's revocable and changeable after death. And by being revocable and changeable, it means what it says. It can be revoked, changed, modified, spindled, mutilated.
Mom can give all the money to her children and forget about his children from a prior marriage, for example.
That's a big problem. It's called a blended family. And we generally don't have a joint trust that's revocable and changeable after death. For that very reason, I've seen a tendency for a surviving spouse to have deference to their kids over the deceased spouse kids. And what we do in that case is we create an AB trust. This one trust on death of either Ma or Pa Kettle is going to turn into two trusts. The deceased spouse, half the community property, because community property is a ball, and on death the ball cuts in half. So the deceased spouse, half of community property, and all of their separate property goes into this B trust, irrevocable, non-changeable, for the beneficiaries who are B's children. The A trust is still revocable and changeable, and mom can do whatever she wants with it, and more than likely it's going to be mom's kids who are the beneficiaries of the A trust.
But what if mom and Paul Kettle want the partner to have the use of and the benefit of after one partner, after Paul goes and dies, okay? In other words, to be able to live on and provide for their long-term care and all that stuff, and then after that, okay, that's kind of what
Okay. So the answer for your notes is HEMS, H-E-M-S, Health, Education, Maintenance, and Support. And that was derived from a case where it said all the assets in the B trust are for the deceased spouse kids, but the survivor has a right of invasion for certain identified criteria: health, education, maintenance, and support. And you can also have it where the A survivor trust has to be depleted before they start raiding the cookie jar of the B trust.
But you don't have to.
No. But there can be problems with that. One I saw was in the B trust was a house, and the survivor was the beneficiary. Correction, the survivor was the trustee of the B trust, and she had a right to get a mortgage on the property, and she liked reverse mortgages.
Oh.
Took out all the money and gave it to her daughter. And so the bypass beneficiaries got a lot of debt. That was kind of a mess. But it's a right of invasion, and it's for, there's a term for it, identifiable reasons for the distribution. And it's not considered revocable or changeable. But the beneficiaries can object if health, education, maintenance, and support, they look at the lifestyle of the survivor. And for one person, taking out money to go on worldwide cruises every year is just normal as hell. You know, just do it every year anyway, so that's normal maintenance. But for others who, you know, want to go up in the mountains and camp in the dirt, now that change of behavior might be considered non-conforming. Are we bored yet?
Scared more than bored.
Oh, okay. Well,
Overwhelmed.
okay. Well, sorry. It's reality. You know, reality sometimes can be a shock. It's just the way it is. But realize you don't have to do everything. You don't have to know everything. And in your life, not every one of these factors are happening. So you can just say, forget the rest of that crap. Ah, hey, you know what? We're done. Look at that. Wow. But I'd like to open it up for additional questions. Yes, you haven't asked many questions, so go to it. Let's hear it.
So my dad had a trust, he passed away, left us the house, we're gonna sell the house. So I'm assuming we're gonna pay taxes on that, on a 1041, is that how that works?
How long ago did your dad die?
This year, and we wanna sell the house this year,
What county is the house in?
San Francisco.
Do any of the kids want to live in the house?
Brother's living in it now, but no, I mean, he's gonna move.
But
We wanna
that's
sell.
not my question. Do they want, you know?
No.
Okay. Generally, I think, personally, selling real estate is the biggest mistake you can make in your life. But that's my view. It may not be yours. So, what do? We have a house. You have to get an appraisal. Then you get the house sold, and you first of all, you have to have a federal ID number to do the income tax. And then you take the value at the date of death compared to the sales price. And what happens in that particular situation is we always have a loss, because the house was worth $1.2 million on Dad's death. Now it's worth $1.25 million, but our real estate broker fees are charging an arm and a leg, and it causes that to be a loss. And then on the tax return, there's zero tax. And then on the 1041. And then in addition, you take the loss, it's called administrative expenses in excess of income. And when you do the K-1 out to the beneficiaries, you pass that administrative expense in excess of income as a miscellaneous itemized deduction. What used to be Schedule A, but it's still deductible on California. I lost you on the last part.
No, but.
I'll translate.
I don't know if I wanna do that, but okay.
Well, it'll save you some tax. So it's like, used to be Schedule A where we had miscellaneous itemized, but now we have that category, but Feds got rid of it, and you want to claim it so you can lower your state of California tax from other sources.
So you fill out a Schedule A from the federal form, so you can use it.
That's correct. And it doesn't end up showing on the Schedule A now, but it's the format, and the programs shove it over to Schedule A of the California.
And you just submit the Schedule A with your state tax.
Yeah.
And who do I use to get an appraisal?
What I would suggest a licensed appraiser. So what people do is oftentimes they'll hire real estate brokers, and we're talking about an appraisal, and what real estate brokers do is something different. They do a comparative market analysis not equivalent to an appraisal. And the IRS just might accept that, and they might not. If you get a licensed appraiser, the IRS, if they don't like it, they gotta hire their own appraiser. But in your circumstance, I bet you dollars to donuts, after you get the appraisal, you're gonna have a loss. IRS is not gonna be interested in that tax return at all. Overall, IRS is not interested in the 1041 estate and trust income tax returns. Very few audits, you know. But there's not a lot of action there. There's not a lot of tax shelters. There's not a lot of games. Go ahead.
Okay, let's say you forgot to get an appraisal and you own the house that you inherited for 5 years, let's say. Can an appraiser go back and give you an appraisal for a set time period where you can use that to value your appreciation?
We do that. Yeah, because it's got to be as of the date of death.
Yeah.
And appraisers.
A realtor can't really do that.
Well, they can do what they do, and they do what's called a comparative market analysis, and the MLS will give them the data to do that. And it's like a pretty good ballpark. And we've used them. But if you get audited, which is unlikely with a loss, IRS couldn't challenge it or say it's different. But, I mean, you go on Zillow and it's got that line that goes like this, you know, and you go right up to the date of death, you go, hey, it looks like it's 1.2 million right there, and you print a screenshot.
That wouldn't work, would it?
It helps.
Oh, it helps?
Yeah, it's what they call swag, some wild ass guess.
I know.
Yeah, that's an accounting term.
Yeah.
So, what else? Nothing else. Well, if we don't have any more questions,
Don't forget to send out the slides, okay?
I'm not going to remember.
Don't forget to send out the slides, okay?
She's going to remember.
Okay.
Yeah, I just work here. Yeah. So anyway, if you need help with something or have other questions, we're around. We're at 925 Ygnacio, Walnut Creek. We do all this kind of stuff. And, I mean, if you had a short question, 5-minute question, I'd be happy to answer on the phone or whatever.
Appreciate your time.
You have another, a trustee cannot be a non-resident of the United States, correct?
Incorrect.
You can have a trustee to your estate, be living in a foreign country?
Absolutely.
Really?
And you just made a mess like you've never seen before. But yes, you can do that. What it does is it changes the trust to be a foreign trust.
Whoa.
And you have to file a Form 2350 for a foreign trust with the IRS every year. And you get a great deal more scrutiny because drug dealers and cartels and those people use those kind of international trusts, and you don't want to be riding with them. The problem with it is jurisdiction. So like on probate, you get an executor in California, yeah, they'll be an executor. If they're in Nevada or Arizona, the California court doesn't have jurisdiction, they're not going to like it, or if they do, they're going to require a big bond. But it causes the trust to be a foreign trust.
So, well, the thing I was leading up to then, let's say you don't have direct descendants, and you have to get like some company to act as the executor or the trustee for your estate, for your trust.
Okay.
A fiduciary of sorts, right?
Right. Okay. That's true, and more say it's different. But, I mean, you go on Zillow and it's got that line that goes like this, you know, and you go right up to the date of death, you go, hey, it looks like it's 1.2 million right there, and you print a screenshot.
That wouldn't work, would it?
It helps.
Oh, it helps,
Yeah, it's what they call swag, some wild ass guess.
I know.
Yeah, that's an accounting term.
Yeah.
So, what else? Nothing else. Well, if we don't have any more questions,
Don't forget to send out the slides, okay?
I'm not gonna remember.
Don't forget to send out the slides, okay?
She's gonna remember.
Okay.
Yeah, I just work here. Yeah. So anyway, if you need help with something or have other questions, we're around. We're at 925 Ygnacio, Walnut Creek. We do all this kind of stuff. And, I mean, if you had a short question, you know, 5-minute question, I'd be happy to answer on the phone or whatever.
Appreciate your time.
Still have another, a trustee cannot be a non-resident of the United States, correct?
Incorrect.
You can have a trustee to your estate, be living in a foreign country?
Absolutely.
Really?
And you just made a mess like you've never seen before. But yes, you can do that. What it does is it changes the trust to be a foreign trust.
Whoa.
And you have to file a Form 2350 for a foreign trust with the IRS every year. And you get a great deal more scrutiny because drug dealers and cartels and those people use those kind of international trusts, and you know, you don't want to be riding with them. The problem with it is jurisdiction. So like on probate, you get executor in California, yeah, there'll be an executor. Attorney, if they're in Nevada or Arizona, the California court doesn't have jurisdiction, they're not going to like it, or if they do, they're going to require a big bond. But it causes the trust to be a foreign trust.
So, well, the thing that was leading up to then, let's say you don't have direct descendants, then you have to get like some company to act as the executor or the trustee for your estate, for your trust.
Okay.
A fiduciary of sorts, right?
Right. Okay. That's true, and more we're using them. There's a profession called licensed professional fiduciaries, licensed by the state of California. And they have a trade association, abbreviation's PFAC, I don't know what it stands for, Professional Fiduciary Association or something. And all of those people are like professional trustees, and they're professional executors, professional guardians, professional conservators. And I was working with one last week.
Who holds them accountable?
The state of California license. They also have a bond, and they're also don't want to go out of business. They don't want to go out of business for doing the wrong thing, and generally they're honest, reputable characters. I've never heard of any of them. Personally, I've never heard of any problems with them. I mean, it's not easy to get. There's a whole lot of licensing and education and bonding and background checks and fingerprints and you name it.
I mean, some banks will do it for you.
Forget the banks.
If you have enough assets.
Forget them. They're a pain in the ass.
Really?
You talk to the bank, no, we don't like this instance. Oh, no, we don't want to work with that person. They just forget the banks.
So this is a licensed fiduciary trustee.
Licensed professional fiduciary.
Okay. They can do all the work, like sell your assets if necessary and all that stuff.
They are trained to be trustees. They're not attorneys. They're not giving advice. They say, you want me to do the work? Okay. be the trustee. And sometimes in documents, we'll write them to say, you know, we want, you know, person one is trustee, then alternate two, alternate three, and if there's ever a vacancy, the successor trustees or the beneficiaries can appoint any licensed professional fiduciary in the state of California. Gives you a lot of choices.
Okay, so
Keeps
one
you
of
out
the
of court.
trustees can appoint,
And if the document says they can. Yeah. And, you know, it's difficult. I mean, families are spread all over the place, and more and more we're having trouble getting alternate trustees. I had one in today. The brother's like lazy, doesn't get around to it, and when he does get motivated, he's on the couch. They were going to name him as, you know, alternate trustee, and I said, I don't think that's going to work very well. You know, I think you need somebody with a little enthusiasm.
one of the problems with these small, these licensed fiduciary trustees, he's an individual, and then you end up aging them out. In other words, they retire.
And they croak. I mean,
Yeah,
it
well, they
happens.
croak. Now
My
you're-
gosh.
now you're-
That's why you have the ability to appoint other ones.
Yeah, but now you've gone on in years yourself, and you're not
Well,
confused
if
about
it says
appointing somebody.
that any trustee can name a licensed professional fiduciary, I would assume that they could name a main one, an alternate, and a third.
Yeah.
Then you've got three choices. Yes?
What if Hog Kettle dies and Mom Kettle doesn't do anything for 20 years?
Yeah, it's called a stale trust. There's a
Like
term.
his name's still on her bank account, like she just like acted
Hey,
like.
that
stuck her
happens
head in the
more
sand
than,
and did nothing.
yeah, that happens more than you would think.
So
It
we
depends
really-
what the trust said to do.
Okay.
And
The
if
trust is all, we've got the trust fixed and everything's in her.
fixed, you brought it to the veterinarian?
No, or I told where, but like the actual bank accounts, all that kind of stuff.
What
all
about
have
the
to
deed on
go-
the house?
It's in her trust.
Is it in Dad's name too? Oh,
It's in her new trust.
new trust.
Yeah,
So she did something.
she did that. But other things like bank accounts and all that kind of.
She
all
left
those-
them in the old trust?
What?
I'm confused.
Like the bank.
For,
like
so
the
you
Bank of
said,
America
I started
has
out
the same
by
one.
you saying that
She did
Mom
that.
and Hog had a trust and Dad died.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you're saying there's another trust. Sounds like she did something.
We did that. But I'm talking
But-
about the little things, like the bank accounts and the credit cards and all.
Are you saying that they're not in the name of the trust?
Because
Is
they
that what
get
you're
put in
saying?
the trust. The bank account is not.
Okay, now I'm starting to catch on.
The
I'm a
house
little
is.
slow sometimes.
So like credit cards, little
Okay,
things like
credit
that.
cards, you don't
All
want in
just
your
have-
trust.
No, I don't want
You
them in the
don't-
trust,
no.
but his name's still on them, so I'll just have to like give them a death certificate and prove that he died and that she died when she died.
Or just fill out another credit card application with frequent flyer miles.
Okay.
The debt part, in, getting the name off, generally when somebody dies, we say get at least 10 copies of, certified copies of death certificate. Give them to third party. And so, by giving the death certificate with saying, please remove the name of Bob Kettle, that should pretty well take care of it. But I fail to see a problem.
Okay.
I don't see a problem.
Okay, good.
There's no separate entity, as long as the original trust was not an AB trust and was still revocable, I think it's okay.
Okay.
What it is, it's not being thorough by naming the new trust as Mom as the trustee of the new trust. Is the way you want all accounts to be set up, to get everything out of her name. So, as a daughter, you can run around and work with her, and generally they want a live person at the bank because they're very distrustful.
Yeah.
So bring her and her driver's license or California ID and start cleaning up the mess that she left.
Try to get her to that.
Yeah, you just, and the problem with the banks are just such a joke now. You get it, I think, oh, I'm gonna deal with at this banker who really knows what they're doing. You go back, they're gone. Every time they're gone.
Yeah.
Every time you go into a bank, you've got some tin horn that's saying, well, how do you work this phone system again? And you bring the stuff, and then you're trying to do things. Oh, these documents, yeah. Let me scan these and send them over to legal. And they're in a bunker in the Philippines or something. And they get an opinion from somebody else. What I always do in the banks is find out the manager's name. Gives you a backup in case things get too wacko. But I always assume the banks aren't going to know anything. Absolutely nothing.
So the Mom Paul Kettle Trust, when Paul gets the bucket, the mom should get the trust changed to just in her name.
It's not changing the trust to her name. What you're
All
doing
the
is you're
assets in the
taking,
trust?
what you had is Ma and Paul Kettle as trustee of the M&A trust. And now Dad's dead, so you just want to have Ma Kettle as trustee of the M&A trust or whatever. So you're removing an additional trustee who's deceased, and we do that on deeds. But it's not, unless you want to change the trust, all you're removing is the name of a trustee.
So the title of the assets within the trust, let's say the house is currently in the trust, the Mon Paul Kettle Trust, that stays the same?
But the distinction I'm making is if Ma and Paul Kettle are the trustee, we file an affidavit of death of trustee. Now Ma is the only one in charge.
Right, but is it still titled the
Yes.
And the assets within the trust are titled the Mon Paul Kettle Trust?
Yes. You don't want to change any of that because if you change the name, it knocks it out of the trust. So it's holding everything in the title of the trust, and when it's like a corporation. If I'm the president of a corporation, I can control all the assets that are in that name. And if I go over here and that's, the next door neighbor corporation, I'm in charge. No, you're not. Your name's not on it. It's that kind of control. So it's one of the basic rules of trust. The trust cannot manage any asset that's not titled in the name of that trust.
So it doesn't need to go out and get a new trust. Should Mon Paul Kettle Trust.
Not unless you talk to an attorney who's biased and trying to make more money.
Yeah.
then there may be a problem. But other than that, it probably works okay.
Changing the distribution of assets after, like I talked before, Ma Kettle wants to now change the distribution of assets, not necessarily alter her children, but change the portions or whatever. She can do that, and she can get that part of the trust changed.
What you're saying, first of all, we go down a decision tree. Is it revocable or irrevocable?
It's irrevocable.
I know. If it's irrevocable, no. If it's revocable, it's changeable. She does whatever the heck she wants to do. Because it's revocable, changeable.
So she just gets the will is built into the trust.
The what?
The will, I guess it's the...
You don't build a will in a trust. They're like oil and water.
Oh, the designation of beneficiaries.
Okay, skip the word will, cancel, okay? That's in a different department, in a different drawer. Mom can, we do it all the time, we amend a trust and gut the first trust, and we put all the new wording in the new trust.
Okay.
And we call it the same thing. And why do we do it that way? Because I don't want to do another deed. So, yes, when when it's revocable or changeable, unless there's clause otherwise, it's not limited. But, I have a problem with amended trusts sometimes. I've gotten them in and I'm trying to work on them, and I got amendment number 1 and number 4 amendment, and it changed over here, but this beneficiary is not this one, and then we got another one over here, and don't forget, this other one came in, and this, that. Give me a break. Scrap the whole thing. Keep the name the same, do the whole thing in one document, say the other document, you don't read it anymore, and then I'm less cross-eyed going through it. It's tough. But you can legally make one change on one clause or one section because you have the right to do that. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not illegal, immoral, or fattening. You just do it.
So you said rather than do amendments, you can basically rewrite the trust using the same name? Is that what you're saying?
I did say that when I was standing right over there.
Well, that's why
Yeah, I just came over here and I haven't changed my mind yet.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify,
Wow.
so basically, so rather than amendments to the
Well,
original
no,
trust.
you're amending and restating. Okay, so in the amendment, you say, everything else in that trust I did 20 years ago, I'm restating it entirely, don't rely on that anymore. And the name of the new trust happens to be the same old trust dated 1970. But now it has new vibrant wording that's accurate.
And a new date.
We don't change the name, the date on the trust. Because then you mess up your title. So in the house, it's recorded as Ma and Pa Kettle's Old Trust, 1970, and you keep that new name when you restate the whole thing.
That makes sense.
So it's the 2025 version,
Yeah, that makes
but
sense.
the name's the same. I mean, it just has to make sense.
Yeah,
Otherwise, the courts are not going to enforce it.
yeah.
But I really like restating the whole thing versus the amendments drive me nuts.
How many amendments can you tolerate? 2, maybe? 1.
1.5.
Okay.
1.5. Well, especially, some of the amendments are really small. Or changeable unless there's clause otherwise. It's not limited. But I have a problem with amended trusts sometimes. I've gotten them in and I'm trying to work on them, and I got amendment number 1 and number 4 amendment, and it changed over here, but this beneficiary is not this one, and then we got another one over here, and don't forget, this other one came in, and this, that. Give me a break. Scrap the whole thing. Keep the name the same, do the whole thing in one document, say the other document, you don't read it anymore, and then I'm less cross-eyed going through it. It's tough. But you can legally make one change on one clause or one section because you have the right to do that. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not illegal, immoral, or fattening. You just do it.
So you said rather than do amendments, you can basically rewrite the trust using the same name? Is that what you were saying?
I did say that when I was standing right over there.
Well, that's why
Yeah, I just came over here and I haven't changed my mind yet.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify,
Wow.
so basically, so rather than amendments to the
Well,
original
no,
trust.
you're amending and restating. Okay, so in the amendment, you say, everything else in that trust I did 20 years ago, I'm restating it entirely, don't rely on that anymore. And the name of the new trust happens to be the same old trust dated 1970. But now it has new vibrant wording that's accurate.
And a new date.
You don't,
No.
we don't change the name, the date on the trust. Cause then you mess up your title. So in the house, it's recorded as Ma and Pa Kettle's Old Trust 1970, and you keep that new name when you restate the whole thing.
That makes sense.
So it's the 2025 version,
Yeah, that makes
but the
sense.
name's the same. I mean, it just has to make sense.
Yeah,
Otherwise, the courts are not gonna enforce it.
yeah.
But I really like restating the whole thing versus the amendments drive me nuts.
How many amendments can you tolerate? Two, maybe? One.
1.5.
Okay.
1.5. Well, especially, some of the amendments are really small. Okay, big deal. You had 3 trustees and one of them passed away or moved to Mongolia, and now you have a new one. That's no big deal. But when they get into all these clauses and different formulas, that's when it drives you nuts.
Thanks for your level of detail.
You're welcome. I like lots of detail.
Can you explain the not buying out the co-heir to like a property again? So if you wanna live in a property, but you only technically get half of it, you said don't buy the other party out, but take a loan out.
The trust takes the loan, that's what you were talking about.
I said it 2 different ways, and your question has 2 different examples in it, so I'll take them both separately.
Okay.
The first one is brother and sister inherit a house. Ma lived in the house. Sister wants to live in it now. Brother is okay, he can be on title. He doesn't need his money right now. He just as soon have real property that goes up in value instead of cash that you burn and buy cars and waste on vacations. And so you go from Ma to the 2 kids as owners 50-50. And then daughter does the parent-child exclusion. Ma lived there, daughter lives there. They file the parent-child exclusion on daughter living there, and then daughter files a homeowner's exemption that she's gonna live there. And the fact that bro doesn't live there doesn't mess anything up. That's the first part of your question. Now let me take the second part of your question. We have 4 beneficiaries. Mom lived there. One of the 4 kids want to live there. If you put the property in 4 names and then end up putting it into 1 name, you just reassess 3/4 of the property. So what you want to do is allocate assets either in cash or in a loan in the trust phase, and the other people don't want to be on title. So you end up putting daughter on title 100%, and then brother and sister 2, 3, 4 get cash.
Where's the cash come from?
Either it's in the estate or you get the trust loan that I talked about when I was hiding behind the screen.
So what does that mean, like
For
a trust
dramatic
loan?
effect.
Where does that money come from? So
Call-
say the house.
We call them lenders. That's
Okay.
what we call them.
Okay, so you're the one, I'm the one that wants to live in the house.
Yeah, good
Scenario.
idea.
And I have a half sister who lives like in
Yeah.
Missouri.
Okay.
So she's not gonna move out.
But does she, first of all, does she want to own half a house in California?
I mean, she'll want the assets, like the money, yeah.
No. I said, does she want to own a house in California and own dirt, not cash? Does she want to own dirt? You gotta answer that.
Does she want cash, or does she want to own half her house?
She probably wants the cash.
But you're speculating.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you ask?
Well,
Well,
Well, if she wants the cash, what's the solution?
yeah.
then you have to have cash in the estate, the trust, to be able to give your half to you, real estate, and give her half the cash. You have to have the cash to do that.
And if most of the trust is just the house.
Then you have a cash problem.
Yeah.
That's where the loan comes in, right?
Exactly. So you get, the trustee gets a loan, and then there's cash with the loan, and now we have a house over there with a crippled equity.
You're
And then
basing
the
the
cash-
loan, the money from the loan, off of the house you're living in.
Yeah.
That's where the loan's coming from, it's coming through the trust.
But you can't get the loan or it fails. The trustee has to get the loan back at the ranch against the house.
And then you get the house and the debt that goes with it.
Yeah.
And he gets the cash. What are your chances to get the cash?
Are we okay yet?
Who has to get the loan?
It's complicated.
Who has to get the loan?
Just a minute, I'm getting through a clarity here.
So like, nuts and bolts, that means like I would be taking out debt basically. Even though I
Well,
like.
I'm not gonna
avoid
say it that way,
loans.
because the way you said it will fail. The way I said, it'll work. The trustee gets the loan.
Are you the trustee?
Then you, in your capacity as trustee, that's your hat, the big
Not
T.
role.
Yeah, not as beneficiary. I'm the big T here. So the trustee gets the loan, not as a beneficiary. You just get a loan against the property, and it's still owned by the trust, and there's no kiddies' names on it.
But now the loan, the repayment of that loan becomes whose responsibility?
It's secured against real property with a note and deed of trust. You don't pay it, it doesn't matter. They're taking the house, and there's a
Oh,
big
okay.
equity. Yeah.
So.
Whoever pays it would be a good idea.
No.
Yeah. We're still not there yet. I'm sorry, clear as mud. I don't know what to tell you. I've got a few followers here who are keeping up, but
Maybe my question can help, is when you say the trustee takes out, and you're the trustee and you're taking care of the trust, so, does all the, like, the actual fees for the loan come out of the trust then? Not
what the fees for loans, you get a loan, and you're gonna borrow 500,000. They take their fees out of the loan. I mean, you end up only getting like 450, and they keep the rest, but you owe 500. But the trustee got that loan, and then the loan's in effect before the house is granted from the trust to daughter. And there's enough cash to make it 50-50 for a stepdaughter from the loan.
And she's got the house, but the house also has a lien on it.
Yes.
So you're responsible for the loan, basically.
It would literally be like you're taking a loan to pay your stepsister off. So even if you just take away the trust and don't like put that in your head, I mean, that's how you'll do it to make it legal. But it would literally be like, you're gonna have to take a loan to pay your stepsister off. So you'll have the debt, but you also have the house, has equity in it.
And further muck up the
You just have
water
to do
here
it through the trust.
is that loan that you get from the trust to do this transaction is not a long-term loan. So you end up getting the house, you have an opportunity to make them payments, and then in a year or two, you're gonna have to refinance, and at that time, the new loan's gonna miraculously be in your name, but you've already had title on it, you already own it.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
That makes sense.
It's the way it has to work.
There's another process, it's taking another loan out.
You have to be able to get the loan.
Yeah.
loan, the way I'm seeing it, it's based on equity. If you have a lender and you say there's no loans on it now and I want a 40% loan, they really don't care how much you make, because you don't pay it and they make all kinds of money on the foreclosure. So, there was another question there?
You answered it back there when you were going over it with her. So.
Good.
So if I was the trustee, I would apply for the loan, but it would go through the
Trust.
through the trust.
Right.
And then I can choose to pay it off and it'd be all mine in time.
It sounds right.
Well, I
As long as you
mean,
say
the distribution would be to the other parties.
One person gets a distribution of dirt, the other one gets a distribution of cash. That's what you want.
Yes.
But you don't want to put it in everybody's name and then
No.
swap title
No.
and get reassessed and then get loans.
No, and that's the key is the reassessing and,
Yes.
the skyrocket, the $10,000 a year in taxes.
Increase, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what is the big worry now.
Yeah.
So what else can I confuse you on?
That was really informative. Yeah, appreciate it. It's a lot of information.
Yeah.
But for
Yeah,
those that have
it's-
trust, it
it's-
kind of makes everything make a little more sense.
Yeah, and I don't have a barrier between tax and law. I mean, there's nothing, there's no barrier. Most law firms say, okay, we're gonna do the paperwork on it. And most tax firms, okay, we're gonna do the tax work. And it's like, what's over the fence? I don't know. It's not my department. And I can't do that.
So it was very informative and helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to provide the information.
My brain is saturated.
Oh, no. Go home and have a beer. Sleep 8 hours.
Thanks, Rex.
very much.
Okay, is there, yeah, yeah, right. Is it, are the accountants in the trust?
Yes.
Are you the trustee?
Yes.